Carbohydrates. We eat them. We love them. Some of us even fear them. But what are they? That is what we're going to answer in this video. In fact, we're going to make this a series. So not only am I going to cover carbohydrates, in later videos, I'm also going to cover protein and fat. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on those videos, and let's get into it. Carbohydrates are one of our macromolecules. In fact, they're actually just a combination of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen molecules that have come together to make bigger sugar molecules. So for some, these molecules are small. They're what we consider simple sugars, where they consist of maybe a benzene ring with a few oxygens coming off of it. However, those smaller molecules can link together and become a link of 20 carbon molecules with maybe 18 oxygens and 52 hydrogens. These we would call complex carbohydrates. So this is where we get into that conversation of what's simple and what is complex. And think about it, a simple sugar, when it's so small, when you consume this sugar, it's going to easily digest, which means it's going to hit your bloodstream faster. However, when you think about a complex carbohydrate, think about how long that link is, or how big it's built. It might take your body longer to digest that and longer for it to hit your bloodstream. So that's kind of the difference when we're thinking about a simple carbohydrate versus a complex carbohydrate. So how do our bodies use these carbs? Well, carbohydrates only have two functions in our body. Actually, they have quite a few more. They do things like provide us with energy. They do things like help with fat metabolism. They regulate our insulin levels. They have a few parts that they play in our body. But when we're thinking in the terms of health and fitness, the main use of the carbohydrate is going to be for energy or for storage. So when you're eating these carbohydrates, if your body doesn't have an immediate need for them, it's going to store for later. The reason for this is a later video, but our bodies go through energy processes. So they have different processes of how they want to break down molecules in your body to give you energy. The process for carbohydrates is favorable, meaning the body takes less energy to digest carbohydrates and metabolize them into energy for you to use. Our bodies are lazy, so whatever the quickest way they can do something, they're going to do it. So they're looking for your carbohydrates for that fuel. However, if you eat those carbohydrates and then you have no purpose for them, you're not going on a walk, you're not going to exercise, you're not doing anything that's going to involve a lot of energy out of you, your body is just going to store it for later. So that when you do need energy, it can pull from those stores. So how does this impact our health? Well, let's break this down a little bit. So I mentioned how the body needs to use carbohydrates for energy, right? So this means while a lot of people think that, well, if I just don't eat carbohydrates, when I go to the gym, when I go work out, my body can just start burning off fat. And while this can be true, again, carbohydrates are for energy. So when you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to run a mile, you're trying to run that marathon, you're trying to do anything that's going to involve a lot of energy out of you, you want to have some carbs there that are going to burn off quickly to give you that energy performance. So when you're thinking about doing a bench press, when you're thinking about running on the treadmill, sure, you could not have carbs in your system and allow fat to burn in order to give you the energy for those exercises. However, like I mentioned earlier in this video, it's not easy for the body to metabolize fat for energy. So it's going to take longer. Meaning it might take you a long time to build up the energy you need to even perform that exercise. So when you're thinking about it, you might have been able to do 15 to 20 sprints in that 30-minute period had you had carbs, but since you don't have those carbs and you're feeling a little lethargic because you don't have that energy, then you might only be able to get through 8 to 10 sprints in that 30-minute period. So when you think about it, you could have done more had you had some carbs in your system. Similar with weight training, you could have been able to push past your 1 rep max. You could have been able to crank out a few more of those bicep curls had you had a little energy in your body. So carbs aren't evil. You need them in order to function and do the energetic things throughout the day. Second thing of how carbs affect our health is, like I mentioned before, they are sugars. So as they start to break down, they go into your bloodstream and they spike your blood level. So when you're eating those complex carbs, that might draw out how quickly your blood is being spiked because they are longer chains. But when you're eating more of those simple sugars, those are immediately hitting your bloodstream. And when your blood sugar level is elevated consistently, that can then turn into you having an insulin issue, which could then lead to diabetes. So that is one of the downsides to carbs. How much you're consuming and how much is getting out of your body, how much is getting regulated, how much can insulin really regulate in getting all that sugar out of your blood. And then the third thing I'll mention in this video when it comes to your health and carbohydrates is that over storage. So as I mentioned, when you're eating those carbohydrates and then you're not going to do anything where your body needs to burn them off, it has to store it. Well, when you think about that, if you're eating a lot of carbs on a day-to-day basis, but you're not doing anything energetically on a day-to-day basis, that's a lot of carbs and glycogen, because glycogen is just stored carbs. That's a lot of glycogen that's getting stored into your body, which could then cause you to gain weight. Because that could then turn into fat storage. So you can actually put on fat by eating a lot of carbs and not having enough energy to balance it out, or not doing enough energetic things to balance that out. On top of that, carbohydrates actually help produce that full look. So a lot of bodybuilders, for example, a lot of people who want their muscles to look pumped, they will combine carbohydrates with water to make their muscles look more swole. The reason for this is every time your body begins to store those carbohydrates as glycogen in your cells and your muscles, it brings in water molecules with it. So it actually helps you look fuller. So when you're someone who wants to look fuller, this could be beneficial. But if you're someone who doesn't want to look fuller, you don't want to be bloated, you don't want to have that full look, this could be a problem. It's not just the water, it's the carbohydrates that have been stored as glycogen, and that glycogen is also pulling water into your cells that contribute to that look. So these are just a few things of how carbs can affect our body. And when you're thinking about this, you then have to wonder, well, how much do I need? How many carbohydrates do I need? And this is going to vary depending on your fitness goals, depending on your health goals, depending on how you are in general. How active are you? How sedentary are you? How are your glucose levels already? Are you pre-diabetic? All of these things are going to factor how much carbs you need. How tall are you? How much you weigh? The dietary guidelines for Americans suggest that 45 to 65% of our overall calories should come from carbohydrates. I don't know exactly when they decided to make this recommendation. Was this before they realized that Americans are becoming severely more sedentary over time? Are they updating this year to year? I don't really know. So when you're thinking of 45 to 65%, that's half of your meals, right? And this is just for a standard person. This isn't someone that has weight loss goals. This isn't someone that has muscle gain goals. This is someone that's just wants general health. We should get that much from our diet. Now, this could seem like a pretty good amount considering the things that carbs does in our body. And like I did mention, it also helps with that fat metabolism, so the breakdown of fat. So when you think about depleting yourself of carbohydrates, you're really inhibiting your body's ability to burn fat as well. But I'll save that for later. 45 to 65%. So that could be high, could be low, depending on how active you are and what your goals are. Later in this video, I will give you some examples and some tips on how to utilize carbs for your fitness goals. But for now, let's circle back to what carbs are in general. So carbs are broken up into three categories. So any carb you eat is either going to be a sugar, a starch, or a fiber. So these are our three categories of carbohydrates. There is no one that's better than the other. They all play their purpose in your health. However, there are some ways you can use them together and use them to your advantage. For example, when you need a quick boost of energy, you might want to go for a simple carbohydrate. When you want something that's going to make you feel fuller for a long time, you might want a more complex carbohydrate. When you're thinking of something where you want it to help you with your digestive system and help you build that stool that's going to help you be more regular, you might want to think about a fiber. So there are a lot of different rules and regulations and things that you can do to play around with these carbs to help you aid in your health. Like I mentioned before earlier in this video, how insulin, so when you're eating one of those simple sugars, get released into your bloodstream and spike your blood sugar levels, you could, on the other hand, combine those simple sugars with a fiber, specifically an indigestible fiber, because what's going to happen is when you eat those together, the fiber is going to slow the digestion of this simple sugar. And what that's going to do is take you longer to digest in your body, which then is going to slow that release of sugar in your blood, which can help you with those blood levels. So Instead of saying, I'm just not going to eat any of these things, you could just combine them with fiber to help regulate that blood sugar. Next, we also have to cover refined versus whole, because as I mentioned, we do have complex carbohydrates. However, when those carbohydrates go through a process that starts to refine them, stripping away some of its fiber, stripping away some of those nutrients, it then becomes more of a refined carb, which could then make it a little more simpler. So these are things like wheat bread as opposed to white bread, whole grain as opposed to non-whole grain, whole wheat pasta as opposed to white pasta. So these are some things that have gone through that process of being refined to make it more of a simple carbohydrates. Again, not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying know what you're looking for. There's also been a lot of arguments about starch. Don't eat too many starchy things. When people fail to mention is as these foods are being cooked, they're actually losing some of that starch. So when you think about rice, when you think about potatoes, when you think about pasta, yes, when you buy them off the shelf, they are full of starch. But as you cook them, starch begins to get broken down. So when you think about boiling rice, if you ever notice all that white filament that's like on top of it, that's the starch that has now been cooked off. So yes, these foods are high in starch, but as you cook them, the starch levels go down. Okay, so you may be thinking, well, what kind of carbs should I eat? How do I know what's what? One thing you can do is follow the glycemic index. So this is a list of carbohydrates, and they list them by what is low and what is high. The low and high refers to simple and complex. What's going to hit your bloodstream the hardest, which is not. So if you want to have a nice balance of carbohydrates in your diet and you want to really control your blood sugar levels, you want to eat things that are low on the glycemic index as opposed to the ones that are high. And if you're going to eat the ones that are high, you want to eat them in moderation or possibly combine them with one of the lows to slow that release of sugar into your blood. And the last point I want to make in this video is to go back into what I said about being able to give you some tips on how you can use carbs when it comes to your fitness goals. So let's get into that. First up, let's talk muscle gain. You want to be toned, you want to be bulky, however you want to word it. What that means is you want to put on muscle mass, you want to put on lean muscle. So how can you incorporate carbs into your diet to help you reach that goal? This is where that 45 to 65% of carbs coming from your diet could be beneficial for you, because you do want carbs before you work out, because you want to have that energy, like I said, to push through that strength training, to allow yourself to go all the way to failure, because the more you can do, the more your muscles are going to tear down to which you then can rebuild them later. That's where protein comes in, and that's going to be a later video. But that carbohydrate is going to give you the energy to really push and give your all in that workout. So you do want to have those in your diet beforehand. After you work out, you also want to have that carbohydrate to replenish what you have lost. So yes, depending on how long your workout is and depending on how many carbs you consume before your workout, you could have burned off a good majority of those during the workout, so much so that your body had to then go into your glycogen stores and pull some out of there. You're going to want to replenish those because, like I said, glycogen is also stored in the muscles. It helps you with that full look. So you want to have those back into your system. A lot of people overestimate how many calories they actually burn during the workout. So really be mindful of the intensity of your exercises as far as matching it with how many carbohydrates you need to consume. Next up, we have weight loss. What I would recommend for weight loss is if you can work out fasted. So sleep overnight, wake up and get your workout in then before you have eaten anything. And after your workout, then you can eat your carbs along with your protein and your fat. So for weight loss, I would keep carbs at a 20 to 35%. I would be more on the low end. And that's on workout days. On days that you are not working out, meaning you're not doing any kind of exercise, you're having a sedentary day, you're laying around the bed, I would keep carbs lower, because again, if you aren't using them immediately for energy, they're going to get stored. So if you don't want to begin to pack back on pounds, you're going to want to keep carbs low on your low energetic days. Think of carbs as fuel, as gas, okay? If you're not going anywhere, you wouldn't put gas in your car. You put gas in your car when you got a long trip to go on. So when you got a lot of things to do, when you have a lot of energy to expend, put carbs in the system. If you're not going anywhere, just leave them out. So what happens when you don't have carbs in your body? Well, your body has to pull energy from either your protein stores, which could be your muscle, or your fat stores. This could be used to your advantage because let's say you don't have any carbs in your body, you haven't eaten anything, you're working out fasted. Your body is going to have to go into those fat stores. This is what you want. As someone that's trying to lose weight, you're trying to lose body fat. So tapping into those fat stores are going to be important. In the fitness industry, we really just call this carb cycling. So on high energetic days, we eat a lot of carbs. On low energetic days, we don't eat that many carbs. You are having carbs every day, but you're just fluctuating how much you eat, and you're fluctuating your calories to also match that. So that's all I got for this video. Hope that you found it helpful. Hope it wasn't too confusing, but you learned something from it and you kind of have an idea of how you want to use these carbohydrates going forward. Just remember, carbs are not dangerous. Carbs should not be avoided. We do need them in our bodies. They do a lot of different things for our systems. We just have to understand how they work so we can understand how to use them. If you like this video, go ahead and you know what to do. Give me that nice thumbs up, and I'll see you back in my next one. As always, don't forget to crush it.